Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Com Report wherever you get your podcasts. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Today, I'm joined by the voice of the Commanders, Bram Weinstein, as we take a look at Eric Bieniemy after his first press conference, our first impressions of Washington's new offensive coordinator / assistant head coach. Before that, a couple of reminders. Don't forget, you can find my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now about Bieniemy's presser, so go ahead and check that out. You can find Bram, of course, on ESPN 630 in Washington, D.C. So, a couple things. On the coaching staff, by the time you hear this, it may be that they announced the new staff, but as of Thursday evening, they were still assembling it, still kind of finalizing who was going to be where. I don't expect massive upheaval, but there's certainly going to be some change, whether it's with some people coming into new roles, some people who are already here, perhaps being shifted into different roles. So that's something to pay attention to. We already know Drew Terrell is out, Jim Hustler's out, and there you go. So that's what we know, but stay tuned for that. That it may be by early next week, it could be done. Ron Rivera said he'd like to have it done by the Combine, which is next week, but there was no guarantee of that. However, it could happen anytime. A couple of other things that could happen anytime is Carson Wentz being released. Don't forget, he's still on the roster, but I would look for him to release sometime soon because they're going to want to give him a chance to catch on with another team before free agency begins, if he's able to do that. And so I would expect that's maybe in the next week. I don't know, but it's going to be sometime soon. We all know it's coming. The other one is the franchise tag for Daron Payne. The deadline for that is March 7th. I would expect him to be tagged and then for the negotiations to continue after that. They want to sign him to a long-term deal, if at all possible. So that's going to be the key. So even if he gets put on the tag, they're going to continue to try to negotiate with him. So there you go. Those are two things. Finally, the Washington Post reported that Jeff Bezos has hired Allen and Company to look into a possible bid on the Washington Commanders. It's a significant step, but we don't know where it's going to lead. We also know, first of all, here's what we know. We know that Josh Harris is one of the groups that has put in a bid and has toured the facility. We know that at least one, probably two other groups have toured the facilities as well. Don't know who they are. That part is very secretive. We also know that Bezos has been lurking out there. We've talked about this for many different times, that other groups involved in this, they know Bezos is out there. And I told you the other day, one person had told me the fact that he hasn't come out and said he's not interested, and there's been many opportunities to do so, the fact that he hasn't done that has led them to believe that he's going to get involved at some point, and this could be the start of it. So we'll see where it goes. Of course, these groups know that he could just come in and plunk down whatever and they're out, because he can top whatever they have to offer. And this has happened before. I think there were some groups. I know the Josh Harris group was one of the bidders for the Mets, Steve, but in that case, they knew that Steve Cohen was out there, and they knew that once Steve Cohen became involved, that was it. So there you go. I think some people are kind of wondering if the same thing's going to happen this time around with Bezos. Still a ways to go, but just another step in this entire process. On Monday, I will have a podcast with a former agent and salary cap guru, Joel Corey, works for CBS Sports, also has a podcast with Empire called Inside the Cap. We're going to go over a lot of the costs involved in keeping a lot of these players around. It'll be the first non-Bieniemy podcast that I will have had in more than a week, but I want to get back to some of the financials as we get closer and closer to free agency and get into some of the issues that this team has to address from a financial perspective, et cetera. So there you go. That's it for me. Now, here's my conversation with the voice of the Commanders, Bram Weinstein, as we go over all things Eric Bieniemy after his first press conference. Bram, I can't, it's funny because you and I have been to a lot of first press conferences for new coaches. I don't remember one like this for an offensive coordinator. Do you?
Nope. This was new. Very well attended. I was, somewhat surprised how many of the players
I think it was
showed
like
up.
10 players.
10 players showed up. The whole coaching staff was there, or I saw most of them. I don't know. I shouldn't say all of them, but I saw most of them sitting in there. I think this is someone of a high prominent national profile. And that's what's really unusual about this,
Right.
that it's one, I think for a lot of reasons, his career has been the subject of a lot of people's interest. And he, as you know, has become kind of a poster child for a diversity issue or a lack of diversity issue. And there, we can talk about it, but he dodged talking about that today and made it really about why he was there. But I think prominent national profile, not a lot else going on today, I think. But for this team, it's a home run hire. And frankly, I thought it was a home run first impression that I got from him as well, honestly.
What is it that stood out to you the most?
I really liked what he had to say about, because, you don't know until you hear the person talk. And the reputation is, hard coaching. And, he reiterated that is part of what's going to happen here, but not inflexible hard coaching. My issues with Scott Turner in the offense, previously was I didn't feel like it was particularly flexible to what was happening in real time. I don't blame Scott Turner. I don't want to make this about Scott Turner because I don't blame him for everything that happened. I don't think that, I think he fell on the sword here for a lot of what happened, and a lot of things are out of his control. But that part of it, especially like early in the season when it's mismatched schemes with, against rush that was coming against them. Clearly publicly, the team was asking him publicly through us to play differently, run the ball more. There is a difference when Taylor Heineke's playing quarterback and Carson Wentz is playing quarterback. I don't know how you don't see it that way. So I think there was just, and hearing Bieniemy suggest that, like, I want everybody to be accountable, but it is my job to put you in the best position to win. And I think my favorite answer was, because so much happened after the season when Rivera and Martin Mayhew did that first press conference, and they both reiterated they want to run the ball 2-1. And everybody's just like ran with that like, that's what's going to happen. And that's just not realistic. Like, we're not right. Navy. And they like, that's not going to happen. Right. But him saying, I don't care how we win. And if we do it, some weeks we run the ball, some weeks we throw the ball. I don't care as long as we win, was really, that hit the right note for me, like in every way. So all along the way, the things that were important to me, which are moving forward here, his whole background and his backstory and what he's got ahead of him, that's for other people to deal with. In my interest is how much better are the Commanders going to be? And he hit a lot of high notes for me today of what I wanted to hear from him.
He did. Now, a couple of things that stood out to me, and it's funny because I go back to, like, this is the kind of press conference that we almost saw, not quite to the degree of a head coach. And so you kind of always go by first impressions of how somebody is, like whether it was Schottenheimer, you could feel the passion. Gibbs, you could feel the aura around him. Spurrier, you knew he was completely outmatched and unprepared, right? Zorn, you could just, I remember you and I walking out of the Zorn presser, and I think one of us said they're going to be 3-13 this year. It was that goofy and bad, whatever. I think from this one, what I really took was the energy and the passion that he has for the game and that he has for being a coach. Now, how is that going to translate to being a good offense coordinator? I don't know. But I think you get guys who want to then play for you if you can do it if you're a certain way and you have that passion. I think this is a guy who's kind of built his career off of that passion, that drive. And I asked him a question about how this is a guy who was in college, was a top running back in the country. He goes to the NFL. He's no longer that guy. He had to carve out his career as kind of a role player and then a special teams guy. And I even asked him how that formed him. And he said in his first year with, I think it was with Cincinnati, that Dan Henning was like going to cut. He goes, if you're not the first one down in the kick coverage, you're going to get cut. And he's like, that scared him. And he even called his agent, said, get me out of here. And somebody basically told him that it's not, it's really about what value can you add to a team. And it took him a little bit to sink in. And then he realized this is how I have to do it. And I think he's transferred that to his coaching. But it's all, I think the passion, the energy kind of surround everything, Bram, for me.
Yeah, I like the mesh here. Like, honestly, I've seen this before, and I don't know how to really describe Rivera, whether in a good cop, bad cop scenario. I think he's more good cop.
Oh, definitely more good cop in this
than
one.
bad
Absolutely.
cop. Yes. And I've seen this before, like where Joe Gibbs is real big time good cop. Really, I mean, he'll tell the players how he feels when necessary, but in general, protective of them, supportive of them, very publicly supportive of them. And then they had Greg Williams here, and that was bad cop, and he was demanding, very very demanding. Gibbs had Joe Bugle, similarly bad cop. Like, he was a really nice guy, and everybody really liked him, but he was taking nothing from anybody and demanding, respect. Rivera, it's interesting. Like, Rivera, I think, is more good cop than bad cop. That said, I do think this team is tough. Like, I don't think that that's a question about them.
No.
When I heard Bieniemy talk about accountability, and you're going to see it on tape, and I want second effort and all that stuff, the stuff that really, for me, I think is the next level for this team. I think it falls in line with what's already being said in the locker room. Everything we need is in this room. Everybody in this room we need. We throw stones. We do this together. We pull on the rope at the same time. And, if they can get that kind of attitude with the offense, and I think it was kind of already there, and there are certain players that I think will take to this, like Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Brian Robinson. I'm not worried about them being coached hard at all. In fact, I think it'll be good for them, and I think they'll actually want it. If in the end this forces them to score more points, then ultimately we'll get to where we need to get to. And I agree. I just think I like the messaging today, and I do think it's in line with the way Rivera speaks. I just think what you're going to see on the field,
I think they spoke a lot of the same stuff.
They did. But I do think the energy level is different. You see Rivera kind of ramp up sometimes, but it's not that often, and it's selective. I think we're going to see this with this coach way more often. So maybe bad cop's the wrong way to put it, but his reputation precedes himself, which is he doesn't care who you are. He's going to demand excellence out of you, and he's going to let you know it. And in the case of Rivera, he casually does that, at least with us, and not that often.
And he'll do it with the players sometimes, you'll see, but it's always, to be honest, like with him, I think you get the feeling that sometimes the player kind of knows what he's doing. With Bieniemy, he's just going to chew your ass out regardless of who you are. Now, the good thing for them is, who's their best player on offense? It's Terry McLaurin. I think if you're going to chew someone out, like, he's a good one to chew out if he needs to be. Because, this is a guy who played at Ohio State under Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer, like,
it's not going to bother him.
Well, no, it's not, because Terry was not a star at Ohio State. He was the third or fourth receiver. So that's the kind of hard coaching he got. So you have a guy who can handle that. I do think there's some guys that they feel that he could probably light a fire under, whether it's some, I don't know. Will how much will it help Cosme? How much could it help some of those young offensive linemen to have someone up their ass all the time? Now, not that Matsko wasn't, but I
think there's some skill position guys, John, that I'm interested to see how they take to this.
Who?
Like Antonio Gibson. Yeah, like, okay. I'm interested to see how he takes to it. And I'm not trying to blast him or anything. I'm interested to see how he takes to this. Like, is he going, like last year in the summer when he had a fumble, and then it looked like they benched him, but we weren't really sure that they benched him. And then they were basically trying to describe that he was going to have a different role. And then unfortunate things happened with Brian Robinson, and they had to scrap all those particular initial plans. Like, I actually think he took that relatively well.
Yeah.
But it, like publicly, but privately, it was pretty clear that he was pretty upset, with everything. And listen, that's natural. Like, I'm not blaming him for it. The coaches, though, Scott Turner and the company, they're not going, that's not what this is. So if he makes a mistake or he gets ridden a little bit because he has a bad week or something like that, how's he going to take to it? Because I look at him and I go, if this flips a switch on and they use him in the way that I think he's capable of being used, he could be dynamic in this, like massively dynamic in this. But if he doesn't take to this and it bothers him, then it could go the other way. Like, this isn't going to be for everybody. And I'm not saying it won't be for Gibson, but he's one of the people I'll be interested to see how he reacts to all of this. Like Brian Robinson, I don't have my first impression of him is this is not going to bother him. He came out of Nick Saban. He's heard this before. He has been in line with people. He had to wait his turn to play running back, and look how good he is because of the amount of people that were ahead of him. I think he got shot, came back, wanted to come back as quickly as possible, played as hard as he could. I saw him pregame a couple of times where you could see it in him. I'm not worried about him for a second dealing with hard coaching. But to your point about some of the others, we'll see. Like, let's see how it goes. And, it's a new personality and it's a new voice in the room. And it's going to be a very demanding one. But I look at this team and I look at the skill position players and I go, yeah, demand more out of them.
Oh, yeah.
It's ridiculous that they were 22nd in the league in scoring with this skill position group.
Right. And I think, that's the thing. Again, we don't know how he's going to be as a play caller. We don't know. And we'll see. I'm not saying it's going to be good or bad. I don't know. I'm only going off what we saw today from him that stood out. And we'll learn about all that other stuff later, and we'll speculate for 5 or 6 months about it. And the key to being a good offense coordinator ultimately is putting your guys in spots to succeed. If you do that, you could be, they have no personality at all, and they'll play for you because they like that. But I do think that this group needed some energy. I do think that side of the ball needed a kick in the butt, not because I think they're all lazy or anything like that, but because I think they haven't succeeded. It's been, I think the last time they had a top 10 offense in terms of yards or points was in 2016. Since then, they've sucked. And it's just been, I think I had the stat, it was in Bram, this is unbelievable. Since 2000, they've averaged 20 or more points 5 times.
Yeah. Just
5 times. They had like in the Spurrier years, they were under 18, less than 8. So
it's so crazy. Like last year, I thought they would luck into a 30+ point game because they're just like, it'd be just one of those days where you can't stop them because there's just too many good players on the field at the same time. And the fact that it never happened, it's kind of, and again, like, I don't want this to be about Turner entirely. Like, it's the front office's fault of what happened with the offensive line, frankly.
Absolutely.
That's not his fault. Like, the quarterback choices, that wasn't his choice either. So, like, I don't blame him that they didn't have a top level quarterback on this team. So I don't want to dump on him. That said, you do have to work with what you have. And the cupboard is not bare, especially on the outside. And I did like hearing, Rivera's been talking about this. I did like hearing Bieniemy talk about this. Get the ball in the hands of these skill position players faster. Let them do the work for you. Let them show you what kind of playmakers they are. The type of stuff that Gibson can do, which is why I bring him up. The type of stuff Samuel we've seen do. The type of stuff we've seen Dotson do. Good Lord. Like, you want run after the catch, game-breaking type players who can either break tackles or shake people. There they are. They're sitting right in front of you. And you've got a massive number 1 potential deep threat, intermediate route receiver in Terry McLaurin. There's no excuse for them to be bottom 3rd in the league in scoring. And that, I hope, will change this year.
Well, and I think the big thing, and I'm going to get back to some other impressions in a minute, but sticking with what we can see on the field, the big thing I heard throughout this process was how they can better use those skill guys. And I think the frustrating part for the people here was watching Terry McLaurin not get the ball for long stretches. How is, that can't be possible. And, how can they do a better job? Like, the thought was that the explosive plays had to come down the field versus like that Dallas game was a prime example of what they could become. And it's the quick throws by Howell. It's the, creating space for these guys to run after the catch because they're all capable of it. And Dotson showed that very well. I think that kid's going to have a really good year. McLaurin obviously can do that. So I think it's that's what they talk about. So I don't like stylistically, people keep asking, what are they going to look like? And I think what you could see the difference is how and where and when they're getting the ball to the skill guys more so than that. That's because, the West Coast is a lot of slant start passes, the short passes, but that could fit this group pretty well. So I think the other thing with that too is Logan Thomas. How does this affect him? Because, and I know people brought up the Travis Kelce, the Kansas City use him a lot. Yeah, because he's a Hall of Famer. So it's not, but having said that, they want to use the tight end. And so where will Logan Thomas be? I think that we saw him get back to close to where he was as a receiver. As a blocker, he's got to get better. And you wonder, like, is that where the knee injury is still bothering him and the confidence in that? And then the development of the other guys, Cole Turner, Rogers, and then Curtis Hodges. They really like those three. So I don't think they have to go out and get one, but I think how are they going to use them? So those are some on the field things, Bram, that you have heard throughout this process. And then again today.
Honestly, if they didn't have such a need on the offensive line and corner and linebacker, I would make an argument that 16 would be for one of those two really, really good tight ends. Like I would, because there are a couple of that looks to be like no brainer type, going to be really great receiving tight ends that are coming out this year. And I would make an argument for it at 16, but because they do have Logan Thomas and others that they like, and they do have massive needs somewhere else, right. I just can't make a case for it. Frankly.
No, you can't. And I think like the other thing is they know that those guards have to be replaced. So, and it's just a matter of how are you getting there? Are you signing someone via free agency, draft? Are you moving Cosme inside and then signing another one? How are you getting there? But I think they know that. Then the question is, what is Chase Rouillet's health? And then, what are they going to do at center, tackle? Where do you go? But so they know they have to replace a lot of those guys. And so, or at least upgrade that line significantly. But you're right. Like that's why I think you're going to wait and see how these other guys develop at tight end. They really do like them. So, I think that's,
and I do too. And I don't think it's not a barren position group. It's actually, it's got a lot of promise to it. And maybe Bieniemy unlocks Cole Turner or someone like that. Or maybe they figure out a way, because Rogers was a total find. Like maybe there's a way they unlock him a little bit next year too. I don't know. But all I'm saying is, like, keep an eye on Curtis. There are a couple of tight ends that look like Kelsey that are coming out this year.
Yeah. But I think with what this team needs, you're right. Now, having said that, if there are some offensive linemen, I know they don't like in this draft, right? And then, so if that's the case, and you don't just pick a lineman to pick one. If you get there and the corners you don't like and the other guys you don't like aren't there, well, there you go. But we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. The other thing that jumped out to me with Bieniemy too, Bram, there's two things. One, he was asked about, all these interviews over the years or being a head coach, but and I heard this again during, shortly after you interviewed, about how focused he was on just being here, not using this for anything else other than just being here. And you have a head coach who loves to say, be where your feet are. Well, nobody said that more than Bieniemy. So I think there was also, there's no bitterness. It's not something that is following him around like some lead jacket or something like that, where he's carrying it around. He seems very enthused about this, but there's no bitterness. And then the relationship aspect too, very big on what about coaching and how it's about relationships, developing that with the players, with others. But I think that was a big thing for him too.
Yeah, no, I liked all that. I mean, again, he hit so many high notes for me: effort, accountability. We are going to be coached hard. We are going to have, like, I'm looking at these people in the front row and I'm asking for accountability from them. But at the same time, he's saying, you better ask it back from me. Like, I liked hearing that. I want to get to know you. I've heard that about him, that he's a big relationship person. Heard all of that. Like, I do, like, just as far as first impressions go, I think it went really well. And on the head coaching stuff, like, I don't know what to say about it, because I don't know, I don't know what's going on here with him. I did hear Ron Rivera, he did multiple different scrums with people, and I talked to him on my own, and I didn't ask about that stuff. Cause again, I'm kind of in Bieniemy's camp here. How does he make the Commanders better? That's all I really care about right now. And, his career is his career, and hopefully he'll, achieve the things he wants to achieve. But I did hear Rivera at one point, when he was asked about it, say, there were a couple of years where I went on 6-7 interviews and I just didn't get my chance. And it finally came around where Carolina gave me the opportunity, and here I am now. And so he's like, I'm not the only, he's not the only one. He has worn this, mainly probably against his will. And hearing him today, it felt very organic to me that he's like serious. Like, he's being written about as if he's the poster child of a lack of diversity in the league. Is he comfortable with that? Because, like, I'm sure he does want these head coaching positions, but if you listen to him today, he's not the one banging the drum that he's been overlooked or whatever the case may be. And maybe it's just the right thing to say, but he is being utilized that way as kind of a pivot point. And it is interesting because look, like, I don't get it either. Like, I don't understand why he hasn't gotten the opportunity yet. And then whenever whispers you hear about how he interviews or all this other stuff, he made a hell of an impression on me today. So I don't like if that's how he's performing in meetings in elsewhere. I am somewhat surprised that he hasn't gotten the opportunity yet.
Yeah, and I don't know. And it's funny because I even asked him about the LaShawn McCoy comments, because McCoy obviously was very harsh against him. Now, when I asked it, I mean, it's funny because you ask it because it's been out there and it's dominating coverage on social media and all that. So you give the guy a chance to see, like, what do you think? And he handled that very well. And I thought his answer was more like, hey, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I'm just basically worried about what I'm doing here. And it seems genuine and sincere. And so, of course, the other thing is, when the question was asked, was a lot of guys have stuck up for you after he said that.
Yeah.
But it also was clear.
Who stuck up for him? Pat Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Tyrann Mathieu, like stalwart Chiefs who were starters and played there
Travis
for a long
Kelce.
time.
So
listen, you and I have been around this way too long. There is no unanimous anything for anybody in this league.
There were
none.
There were some,
Zero.
believe it or not, there were some players who didn't like Joe Gibbs.
Of course.
I mean, so
there's no such thing as unanimity in popularity in this sport whatsoever. Like, so, like, okay, so one guy, his experience with him was that. I don't blame McCoy for sharing that. And like, that was his experience. But the support for him has been overwhelming. And certainly he's in the minority of an opinion like that.
Yeah. And again, I think the best thing for Bieniemy is coming here, he will get the chance to fully show everything he can do. So, you have a chance, if you can make something of a situation here, given, Sam Howell, 19 career passes, maybe he could be a good quarterback. We don't know. You have an offense that hasn't done crap for a long time. So if you turn something around here, it's going to look really, really good for him. So it's a gamble for him on himself. And I think, but again, like, what stood out to me with the whole thing is, this is not somebody who operates out of bitterness. He operates out of passion for the game. You can just feel that. And I think, I always felt like Greg Williams was a hard ass to be a hard ass. He wore that with a source of pride. This guy, I think it comes naturally, right? And I know, like, even with Williams, you'd have, like, he dropped the F-bombs here and there, and like, well, the players would tell me, like, after a while, they became immune to all that.
Yeah.
The guy that they feared the most was Greg Blash. Because they said when he would do it, they were afraid that he actually might kill you, because that was the passion he had. It came from that. And I think with Bieniemy, there's going to be a lot of that. And I like that. Again, I don't know what it means as far as a play caller goes, but the things that I like as a play caller or as an offensive designer is the input. Like, when in Kansas City, Andy Reid was very big on collecting input from many different people. I think he's going to be that same way. And so I think it's, who is he going to surround himself with to help foster those ideas? And then it's, again, putting guys in position to succeed. And so we didn't get a ton of specifics, but I wouldn't expect that today. But that's what we'll see. And so we'll see that. But until that point, how much does he help with their details and attention to details in the game? I think all that stuff matters a great deal.
Yeah. And, the tough part, and they reiterated this over and over, they can't really be in communication with the players by virtue of the CBA.
Right.
So, like, I found this to be crazy, that, like, this is what they negotiated, that, like, you just can't talk to us type of stuff. And I don't know how that's helpful for anybody, the players, the coaches, anybody, like, I get it. Maybe some players feel like it would be abused in some level and that it'd be held against them if they're not constantly there in contact. And so I understand where they're coming from. But in this case, it was just so striking that, like, here are all these players here that would love to talk to him. He'd like to start working with them. And there's, like, kind of a prohibitive part of it. And there's one other thing about the opportunity, because, like, everyone's trying to figure out, why did this happen? How did this happen? Why would he go from there to here? All that type of stuff. What was clear, if you listen closely to what he was talking about, was he'd been thinking about leaving there for a while, like, for whatever reason it is. Yeah. And this is another thing that never seems to get brought up, like, when talking about this. His contract as of the Super Bowl had expired. Right. So he was looking for a position. he had only signed a 1-year deal after last year. I think they thought he was going to get a different position last year.
I think they did think that, yeah.
They, only he knows, and Andy Reid and all them only know the real answer to that. And obviously they like him. It's not like they were, pushing him out the door, but he only signed for a 1-year deal, so they've been waiting and he's been eager to move on. So I don't know why everybody looks at this as he left Pat Mahomes. He did not. He was only under contract with them for so long. I liked how he couched it with, I don't want to be comfortable my whole life, and I do want to take on a different type of opportunity. This is certainly one of them. And the other thing that nobody knows, because this has also became very clear to me today, if you asked him, when did this come together? It definitely was coming together before the Super Bowl. They waited out. They waited out the Super Bowl because they had to wait out the Super Bowl. But just think about how in demand this person is, or perceptually is, and he only really took one interview and took the job. So it was a done deal before, and who knows for how exactly long it was, but probably at least a couple of weeks. And then lastly about it, and this is the other thing, I don't know the answer to this. You don't know what's in his contract. So for those who sit there and try to couch, what is this opportunity? You don't know what this team offered him. And all things considered, considering what I've heard in the past about deals like this, I don't know what's in his contract. So, and I'm not going to speculate what it is, but just understand all these kind of surface ideas of why someone would do something and all that stuff oftentimes is not the reality of it. If you don't, if you really, until you dig in and know exactly what's on the line, what the opportunity looks like, what the future path is, and all of those things. And clearly also, he, I think, genuinely was ready for just a change. And it also sounds like Kansas City was too.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing too that's important to note here, first of all, if he wasn't getting a job after some of those Super Bowls and with the offense they had after 4 years in OC, he's not going to get one after 6. If he wasn't going to get one now, he wasn't going to get a head coaching job there for whatever reason. And if they're going to use the Andy Reid shadow and the Pat Mahomes shadow, well, then the best thing to do is to get out of there. And it's not like he's going to a place there is some intrigue on this offense. You can start with all the skill talent, and then but there's a lot of mystery about Sam Howell. But it's a good opportunity for him to run his own show. And you can't underscore what that would mean. And yes, we all know where things could go. You have a new owner coming in at some point, what will happen there? What kind of security does his staff have, et cetera? But the flip side for him is if it works, it could really pay off. Because if you want okay, hey, now you can't ignore me if that's what the goal is, right? And so I think that's why to me, it's not, I don't consider this a lateral move because he's running his show here. He was not, he's
an assistant head coach and offensive coordinator of an NFL team. It's not a lateral move.
No, but it's it's now in terms of
who thinks that? Why do people say that?
Right. And that's what we kept hearing. But it's, when you're not calling the plays, and if that's a knock against you, here's a chance for you to do that thing that people wonder about. What can you do there? Now you're going from Pat Mahomes to Sam Howell. Yes, that's quite a change, but you are running your show, and it wasn't
from Pat Mahomes to anybody in the league not named Joe Burrow or Josh Allen. It's a huge change,
right? And but he wasn't getting a head coaching job for whatever reason. He wasn't getting it out of there. This is a chance for him to go show more of what he can do, and I think that's a big factor too. But again, with him, what you did not hear is him operating out of bitterness. And I like guys like that who are able to look more forward, focus on what you have now, which is what he says he'll do. And then, then see where it takes you. And so, I enjoyed listening to him. I also like Bram, and you weren't there for this. At the end of when we had a little scrum with him after his press conference, and I put that video up, hopefully we'll have this up on the site on Friday. But after we were done, I asked him, what place are you going to miss in KC the most? What barbecue place are you going to miss the most? So he's pretty much all of them. But then it led to he's a big time smoker, smoking the ribs. So we're going to have some conversations with him about different smoking meats and
I knew I liked this guy. I knew I liked everything he said today.
Oh yeah. I mean, and he kind of poked, what was his line about, working hard so you so you can feed yourself. He goes, you can tell I've been working hard. Something along those lines. It was a funny line.
I'm telling John, like, I'm not trying to, like, because I'm with you. Like, I watch these things very closely. I listen to everything they say, and first impressions really matter. And this guy was hitting him out of the park today for me, like totally out of the park on like every level. I was shaking my head yes at one point. Like I was like, and I try my best not to do things like that.
Well, I was like, I think when you stood up and said amen, I think that was a little bit much, Bram.
For as far as first impressions go, he really knocked it out of the park for me today. Yeah. And so I'm excited about it. And, the cupboard is not bare here. Far from it. They are going to have to give him some help on the offensive line. I don't care who the quarterback is. That needs to be fixed. And it's the one thing I wanted to talk to Ron Rivera about today, but I just didn't feel like it was the right day to do it because like we're going to get into these discussions today on all of this. I didn't feel like it was the right time to do it.
Right. But, and that's the thing is, and the last thing I'll say is, as everybody's reminding me, no coach is a miracle worker. I mean, Joe Gibbs, when he came back, his offense has struggled. And, this is one of the greatest coaches in history. You can put a case as him as the best, but his offense struggled that second time around. So you still need to have the Jimmies and the Joes on that offense. Anybody does. And, Sean McVay, great offensive coordinator. They struggle when guys got hurt. Kyle Shanahan has struggled when guys aren't healthy. It's just, that's the nature of the sport. So you have to have those guys. They have to give them a chance with the line. They've got to improve that. And I feel strongly that they know how much they have to improve that, and then they need Howell to at least be good.
Yeah,
and
to be good.
Do that.
Yeah, to be good.
If they do that, then we'll see what. Then it could be fun.
It's funny you brought up Gibbs though, because my every Thursday on my radio show we do a bit called Throwback Thursday where we pick a date that's significant to this week. My producer said I want to do 2006, and I said why? He goes, because in February 2006, Joe Gibbs flew to Kansas City, got Al Saunders, brought him back to Washington, and named him assistant head coach and offensive coordinator to change the offense.
Change the offense.
And I was like, wow.
Wow. That's right.
That is almost too surreal that happened.
Yeah, no, you forget that. And it was not a good fit.
It did not work out. Al Saunders, it was legendary playbook that was supposed to be like an old phone book, did not take particularly well. And I actually liked Al a lot. A very nice guy, but it did not fly too well. No,
still got to have the quarterback. And that's always going to be the key for any team. So if Sam Howell comes through, then I think this team has a better chance. So there you go, Bram. That's it. You got anything else?
I wanted to ask you if you think Jeff Bezos would give Lamar Jackson $250 million guaranteed, because that's the real big next question.
No. And I don't think, that's the funny thing is because like that whole rumor, it ain't happening. So there's for many reasons, and Baltimore's not going to send him to Washington.
No.
So he could be a star an hour away and take their fans down here.
That's the definition of terrible business.
Yes. Idea. Yeah. So next question. So there you go. We'll end on that one. All right, Bram. Thanks.
Yep.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Bram for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Monday with another podcast, again, talking to Joel Corey, who is the expert on all things financial and is a hot guy to talk to this time of the year because of that. Talk to you next time.